Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale, maybe finale, of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. A great finale, or season finale, whatever it ends up being. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Okay, I really like this finale. Boy, oh boy, can I see this finale really pissing a lot of people off. It's just like, because I don't know how many people, I don't know, like, I mean, once again, the show getting the general reception it is. Once again, you either really, really like it, myself included, you are right in the middle, liking some bits, hating others, or you just straight up hate the show. You know, that's just kind of what it is, right? So, people who hate the show probably really hate this ending. I'm curious about people who've liked the show so far, who've really liked it, how they're feeling about this ending, because it takes what they set up last episode and doesn't completely null and void it. They just don't really deal with it in the finale to the extent that probably people wanted them to, because it's like, how do you wrap that up in one episode anyway? And it's like, I think this right here is kind of what people would want from the show in its entirety. That's the thing too, like it being a jokey way they ended this finale because it set up something so strong, like how it ended last episode. I could see that not working for people. It super worked for me because the entire episode I was like, wait, what are we doing? What's going on here? It's just like they threw everything at the wall, literally, and they made a whole joke of, okay. First and foremost, the opening. Holy crap, I love that. That opening, obviously paying homage to like the 70s Hulk TV show with Lou Ferrigno as a Hulk. I completely forgot about that. Jim was turning to the camera and being like, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. I forgot that there was promotional photos or something, like one of the first things like released from the show. I don't remember if it was like a trailer or whether it was like photos, but it was like of Tatiana Maslany and Mark Ruffalo in like 70s gear, and they were like, people were like, wait, what is this show? I completely forgot about that, and now it's like, oh my god, it was in reference to this bit. Oh my god. Interesting, because once again, a lot of, I don't know if I think I've talked about it, but once again, if you're unaware, a lot of this shows, at least some of this show got moved around. Like, like, I guess when they were like making it, they ended up, once again, the origin story was actually supposed to be like episode 8. What we got, like a lot of what we got in episode 1 was supposed to happen in episode 8, but they moved stuff around. So I don't know, maybe that element of it would have been earlier in the season. That's why they released it, or maybe it was always going to be in the finale episode. Either way, them playing with that, and I also love that them like joking with the whole aspect of, because they kept it to the 70s like aspect of the Hulk show, where it's just like you get a different actor just in green paint playing the roles. I love that they did that too. So I was like, dude, that's so cool. That's so good that you did that. I like that, and I think it's a nice like wink and nod, an homage to the Hulk, that the Incredible Hulk show like that. But nevertheless, Jen wakes up in a cell and things haven't gone her way. She wants to immediately take legal actions against Intelligentsia, but it's like, no. You got your own legal issues to deal with. They're going to let you out considering like the circumstances, but it has to be, with a condition, which you're like, it's going to be Emil's condition, isn't it? And it's like, yep, she has a thing to like make it so she can't be She-Hulk, and basically her life implodes because it's like, right, she loses her job at the law firm because it's like, well, if she can't be She-Hulk anymore, that's the only reason why she was working there in the first place. So there's that, it's sweet because like Pug and Nikki are kind of her ride or dies. They're there to kind of help her. I also love that Pug was like, I tried to leave messages, I was trying to act cool, even though I was literally talking to the Hulk. But she had to clear out her desk, had to leave out her apartment because I guess she just couldn't afford it anymore now that she had no job, or maybe they just kicked her out because of her current circumstances, like her legal issues. Either way, she had to move back in with her parents. It's like, don't worry, honey, people get arrested every day, and her mom's like, every day. So she's back home and she's trying to work with Nikki to find out. It's like, well, how do we track down these intelligentsia guys? It's like, well, the platform's like highly like secured, so finding them is going to be pretty hard. And Nikki's like, we'll do whatever and anything, but Jen's like, no, we'll do what we have to legally. And it's like, that's what I said, any and everything. It's like, no. It's like, fine, be boring Jen Walters about it. So also, maybe it's just me, but especially in that little video that Jen's mom shared with Nikki, that video, it reminded me of Cosima energy. Like, I don't know, especially the way Tatiana's hair looked in that. It's not a one-to-one, but it gave me like Cosima vibes a little bit. So, you know, if you're unaware, that's Orphan Black. I won't say much more than that, just in case you've never seen Orphan Black and you don't know what Orphan Black's about. Go watch Orphan Black. Don't look anything up. Don't watch a trailer. Just watch the show. If you've managed to go blind and go into that show knowing nothing, go into that show knowing nothing. But it just, for whatever reason, I immediately thought of Cosima, like when she was like, when Tatiana, like, you know, like being back at college, dancing like that. It gave me, like I said, Cosima energy. Either way, and I love how Nikki utilized that by posting it to the Intelligentsia board, and you're like, yo, cool, give us the deets, bro. And she's like, shit, I can't show up as me. So, and I also love, at the same time this is happening, she's getting Pug's help. She's like, please do me a favor. Please tell me you're still here. Then there's the whole situation of Jen just kind of like I can't be She-Hulk. My life's kind of turned upside down. She's like, wow, is this really how we're going to end the season? And it's just like, or maybe she said that later, but it's just like the narrator starts like, she's like, no, we're not doing the narrator thing. And so she's just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to go at Emil's place. I was like, of course he wasn't going to get the message. There's no reception there. So she shows up there. Home dude from the Wrecking Crew was there to welcome her. And I was like, at first I was kind of suspicious. I was like, is something shady about to go down? Kind of does, but not really. Because I was like, well, there's no one else here and it's just him. And I was like, that seems weird. I was like, did he mess with her drink or something? But he was like, oh yeah, you gotta be careful. Make sure Saracen, like you watch Saracen when he makes it, because he puts chicken blood in it. But then later on, be like, honestly, it doesn't taste as good with, you know, it actually tastes better with the chicken blood. So Pug having to infiltrate the group, and lo and behold, we find out Todd is Hulk King. He is the one who didn't just be a part of Intelligentsia, he made it. And it's like, dude, that scene got too real, because I'm like, oh god, it's like, why does it have to be a She-Hulk? He's not a He-Hulk. And it's like, yeah, and Lady Thor, come on. What was it? It was like, now, I'm not saying this because she's a woman. Like, I'd say the same thing if she was a man, but, you know, she sucks or whatever. And I'm like, oh, God, that's too real. I was like, this show is too real sometimes. I'm like, oh, God, that's so wild. So Pug he's like having to play the gross role. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, please don't make me do that. It's like, and he has to play the role. It's like, oh yeah. Cause they're like, yeah, talking about how she, you know, doesn't deserve what I guess like the whole like going on dates with her. I mean, and we also did never get an answer to how he got her blood. I heard a theory that someone said because he had the Wakanda spear. It's like, once again, what did Todd say? Can vibranium pierce your skin? I didn't even think about that last episode when he showed it all. So all they had to do was like chip off a piece of that spear, like put it in a needle, and then like Josh could easily take her blood. So they didn't really go into explaining that. And I wonder, is that just something where it's like they're not going to explain it, but you could like theoretically piece that together? That seems like such a logical explanation, because he is the one that brought up the whole like, oh, could vibranium pierce your skin? And it's like Wakandan weapons are like, you know, made from vibranium. So I'm like, okay, you know, I like I say, I didn't even think about that last episode, but I was listening to someone's discussion about last week's episode, and I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Either way, then she shows up at the gathering place, like after they're putting on the oh, here's our special guest, and it's Emil, and I was like, wait. So I guess the whole thing is he's putting on this show, but he doesn't support everything that they're doing, but it's like, hey, I'm making money and I'm doing it as Abomination. I mean, it's not like I'm doing it all, you know, it's not like I'm doing anything bad as Abomination, but you're supporting people that kind of like, not just kind of straight up like invaded Jen's privacy and put it out there, like, you know. So it kind of sucks that you supported them, but then it turns into a whole thing. I love that line from Todd, which makes absolutely no sense. He's like, "Oh, this power, I earned it." You mean you claimed she stole the power? And I think that's the point. The hypocrisy of like he's getting so pissed, like, "Oh, you stole this power that was never yours," but now it's like, "I'm going to take this power that I've earned." You mean the power that you were taking from her? Like, I think the point is like he can't even recognize the hypocrisy there, but he kind of turns into a whole thing, and she's like, "Wait, no, like this can't be happening, right?" And then the mill's there, and then all of a sudden, Bruce shows up and he's like, "Oh, let my cousin go," and they're about to duke it out, and you're like, "Wait, what's?" And she's like, What's going on?" She's like, "These storylines aren't making any sense." I was like, "They are kind of throwing everything at the wall, aren't they?" She's like, "No, this doesn't make any sense." And then it's like, she's like, "Are you enjoying this?" And then it cuts to like the Disney Plus. Oh my, that was so good. She's like, no, you can't just like do that and gotta get away from me. So breaking the fourth wall harder than she's ever broken it before. And I really love when like, when stuff like this happens. Cause like it reminds me of like, I know like I haven't watched a lot of stuff that has straight up broken the fourth wall to such a large extent. The only thing I could think of, it's like, I know obviously Deadpool, but obviously like Gumball, like I know has done some stuff like that. Maybe SpongeBob has. Like I'm sure like there's quite a few cartoons, comedy specifically cartoons that have probably like broken the fourth wall to such a major extent. But her literally walking out, landing up on the set, then going into the writer's room, and they're just like wait, they were like, maybe we make the whole storyline for season 2 that it was just a dream. And then she's like, "Do you guys hear yourself? Like, oh my God, you're basically making this end like where'd you get this ending from? Like cause all of them are like, "Oh, hey Jen, like, oh, here you are." And they're like, she's like, "Guys, like, what are we doing here?" And it's like, oh. It's like, right, who's the one behind on this? It's like Kevin. It's like, "Well, I'm going to talk to Kevin." They're like, "Oh, you don't get to talk to Kevin." She's like, "Well, I'm going to talk to Kevin." So I was like, because I was like, that's a bit people have always said, like, eventually is going to get to the point that Kevin Feige is going to actually pop up in the MCU. And I'm like, there's no way. They're not actually going to do it, are they? Are they going to get someone playing Kevin Feige in this? And then she goes and gets stopped by all this security. She has to sign an NDA, but they still send security her way. So she busts through, still making her way to Marvel Studios, and sees like the Marvel Cinematic Universe in front of her and screens. And of course, Kevin is, I saw the acronyms in like the subtitles. I was like, oh, okay, so it is a robot. And I love the whole thing of, I didn't notice this until the end credits, where it's like, if the drawing like aspect of the credit sequence that he has like it has a hat too. I was like, oh God, that's so good. And it's like, oh, I'm Kevin. It's like, what were you expecting? A man? It's like, oh, could you please could you transform back into Jen? Why? Because it's pretty expensive. Okay. And like, also don't do it on screen, because that's just going to be a whole thing. It's like, okay. It's like, okay, now this is away from you. Now you can transform back. It's like, okay, is this better? It's like, oh yes. So it's like, right. She's breaking down like, okay, I get it. Like, it's like, oh, everyone says like, all the Marvel movies end the same way. And he's like, who says that? I was like, dude, we're getting so meta. It's messing with my head. Cause I'm like, this episode is literally, dude, they did a really good job writing this, because you're like, oh, that's so true. That is like people's biggest complaint. They just feel like every Marvel movie, like that is touching on a lot of complaints. It's super crazy. And also once again, this has also been something that She-Hulk has done. Like I've heard people talk about, like, yeah, in the comics, she'll like get out of the comic and comment on like, why are you doing that? Why are you writing that like that? Why are you drawing that? Like, she'll make references to the comics like in that regard too. So to be able to get that in this regard in the MCU, and her having some complaints about things, because I love it where she's like, no, don't make it so that Todd gets powers, because if you do that, she's like, it takes away from my story. The main overarching thread of this story is supposed to be my struggle between being Jen and She-Hulk. That's supposed to be what that storyline's about. It's like, Emil, make it so that he actually suffers consequences Bruce, it's like, yeah, don't make him come in like to save me at the last day because this is my show. It's like, yeah, but he has to explain something. But you know, but no, save it for the movie, which you're like, oh, interesting. So, because that's been rumored lately about like, oh, it's going to be a movie like the Hulk, whatever Hulk related, whether it's going to be like a World War Hulk or whatever that they might be potentially making. So I'm like, that, I guess that makes that super official. What was that line she said? She's like, "Yeah, my cousin smashes buildings. I smash the fourth wall and bad endings." And Matt Murdock, I was like, "Yo, oh God, I love it." And oh God, I'm missing everything, but it was so good. What's that line too? I was like, "Oh, he's like, oh wait, you're sitting," because she's like, "Yeah, I've got other stuff we should fix about everything." It was so good. Oh, right. There was that line too of like, oh yeah, even saying some are better than others, but I leave that to debate on the internet. You're like, dude, this is too real, man. Oh, it's too meta. When stuff gets so meta like that, it kind of breaks my brain a little bit. She also referenced the whole Todd taking her blood. It's like, oh yeah, it feels suspiciously close to the super soldier storyline. And also, could you bring Daredevil back? And I love that they actually did it too. I was like, there's nowhere to actually go. Oh, cool. That's amazing. Cause it's like, oh yeah, and I think even Kevin was like, yeah, we have been pretty light in that, department. I guess like maybe just on the department of like people actually having sex in this universe. I don't know if they're talking about that. Cause there've been romantic couplings, but it's never been like, oh, like, this show's highlighted sex in the MCU. I think this is the most sex we've been aware of in the MCU because it's all been implied sex. Once again, there was a whole conspiracy theory about Captain America being a virgin and everything. So, oh my God, right? The daddy issues. It was Tony having daddy issues, Star-Lord, two daddies, two issues. And she's also like, yeah, and when are we getting the X-Men? And she looks at the screen, kind of winks and gives you the thumbs up. I'm like, dude, this is amazing. I love it. I was like, oh God. Once again, I'm like, the more I'm loving it, I'm like, dude, I know this ending is going to piss people off. Once again, because they made the ending mainly a joke. And it's like, yeah, it is a comedy, but it's still a thing of people probably like won't really like the fact is that it is played for a joke. Cause, you know, that, I don't know, man, that probably would not sit well with people. Like I said, just because they set up something so serious at the end of the last episode and to kind of play it. Once again, a majority of this episode is a joke. It's a goof. But then you do like, yeah, those implications are still there because like, right, she shows up later on. She wants Todd to get busted. She wants to handle it from a judicial standpoint of like, no, I'm going to, see you in court and take you down. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Jen. She could beat him up as She-Hulk. But it's like, no, I'm going to face you in court as Jen. This is the person you tried to humiliate and everything. So I'm going to take you to court. So it is this situation of, yeah, it's all played for a joke, but that isn't a race. She's still going to take Intelligentsia to court. You know, I mean, and I think that's just a sad aspect of it too. Like, you know, and it just very similar to real life. Sadly, even with like a revenge porn situation, I don't think there's much you can do about it once it's out there. Maybe they were able to disconnect stuff enough, but it's like, I don't know. Like, I doubt the entirety of it. Well, we see a whole bunch of people get arrested, so we have no idea how much. Because I think in the ending credits when Todd is on trial, I think we see the person that's in the stand, like at one point, like sweating. I'm thinking that's supposed to be Josh. Oh, right. And there's the most effed up line too of see you on a big screen. She's like, really? And he's like, no. And she's like, whatever, Kevin. You're just like, that's so mean. That's so mean. I love it. I'm like, oh, dude. It doesn't, because truth be told is, I would want She-Hulk to stay at a TV show just because I like this format and I feel like, I'm sure you could do it in a movie. Obviously, you have a bigger budget and stuff like that. But I just feel like I like the new, like it being a TV show. I feel like, I mean, once again, you could do it in a movie, but I feel like the length of the TV shows, 30 minutes and stuff like that, really playing with that. Like, I think the TV show format really lends itself nicely to She-Hulk. Because one of the inspirations for this was like Legally Blonde, which I do appreciate, that on Jennifer's door in her room at her mom's and her mom and dad's place is actually a Legally Blonde poster. But yeah, like she kind of resolved everything. Todd's going to jail. It's like, that is super overpowered. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to change the entire ending. Like that, it opens up a whole worm of questions of like, well, how do you, I mean, you know, obviously like, they'll probably like deal with that in the future of like, whoa, aren't you super OP in the MCU? Doesn't it make you the most powerful being? It's like, no, it doesn't. I'm able to break the rules sometimes, but even I have my limitations. Well, what makes you have limitations? Like, I don't want to be so broken, and like, I still want it to be fun and enjoyable for the audience. So I'm not making myself the most powerful person, but I am trying to give what I think is the most interesting story. Even saying like she had thoughts about a season 2, which I did look it up. There is no confirmation. Disney / Marvel hasn't said anything about whether or not there's a season 2. Fingers crossed, I said it before, I want a season 2. I want the show to have multiple, not even just 2 seasons. I want the show to have multiple seasons. Because once again, I'm super biased because I enjoy the show so much, but I'm also extremely biased because it's Tatiana Maslany. I also forgot that like Titania was also in that little like initial ending at the end. I completely forgot she showed up at the last minute. It's like, wait, why are you back here? What's going on? You know, so. I also love Daredevil dropping, and she's like, hey, Daredevil, sorry, everything's already resolved. It's like, what? And Titania's like, oh, hi, Daredevil. And it's like, wait, did those two like hook up? It's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And she's like, hey, just wait over here, sends Emil to jail. It's like, right, he'll be in jail for 10 years, but it's like, hey, he's taking responsibilities for his actions. So, does make you wonder what happens to everyone else at that retreat. I mean, I guess it's like, I guess they've got to, maybe someone else is going to take over it. It'd be interesting if, well, because I'm assuming Jen got her job back. Because I'm guessing she just like, because she just basically rewrote the entire script, she probably made it so that now that she got Todd, and maybe she erased the whole like, oh, having to put a like keeping her depowered, like I don't know. I'm curious, like, did they like handle that in the show, or did she just kind of on the outside fourth wall breaking element of it, did she just erase that part of it because she was able to show up as She-Hulk and there's no problem? So and then she brings Matt to the family dinner, and they're just like, oh, it's like, oh, like Hell's Kitchen seems like a scary place. He's like, yeah, but it's where I was born. It's like, do you actually make any money? He's like, well, we did. She's like, oh, sounds like you don't make any money. He's like, you need to make money. And it's just like, are you going to be, it's like, no, he's just like, I'm only going to be here for like a week, and they're pressuring him. I love it. It's just our big family just kind of putting him in a very complicated space. And then all of a sudden Bruce shows up he's like, yeah, I was on Sakaar for a while, and this is, the person he brought back isn't that Hulkling? You're just like, wow, you're just so casually dropping that, if that's who I think it's supposed to be. Once again, I'm not the comic book guy. So I'm like, yeah, we're casually dropping that. Don't worry, we'll talk about that in the movies. I wonder, will it be a whole thing of picking up with Bruce leaving in episode 2, and then like, will the movie end with us here back at She-Hulk, or will it end with him being like, and that's what ended up happening while this was all going down? That could be also our way to kind of sneak Jen into a movie, if they decide to do like the whole thing. I think it is a movie, because they've even kept saying like, oh, a movie, so. But like I said, the episode just ends with Jennifer saying like, right, anyone that like hurts or harms innocent people, they're going to pay the price. Like, oh, are you saying that as Jen Walters or as She-Hulk, the superhero? And she's like, both. And it's like, oh, and who are you wearing right now? And she's like, oh, okay. And just kind of bounces, and that's where things end. Except for our post-credits, which it kind of spoiled when they were like, special guest Benedict Wong. I'm like, Wong wasn't in this I was like, he's going to be in the post-credits then. And he gets a meal out, so we're like, okay, so it still potentially leaves room for Emil to be a part of the Thunderbolts, because that was some things that people were disappointed that he wasn't part of the Thunderbolts. But considering where his story was, it's like, well, because everything he was doing wasn't 100% a lie, but he was just making money on the side. But he didn't side with Intelligentsia, but it is a thing of like he was kind of helping out by being a spokesperson at it. So it's like, so it's that thing of like you're supported by being a part, like by even appearing there. It's kind of a shame, especially because you helped Jen through so much in episode 7 too. So, but that begs the question, like, all right, so at the very least, we know Madison was with Wong. Granted, that was like back in episode 4, and now Emil is with him. So it's like, is that trio? It's like, when's the next? Like, will we see Emil? Will we see Emil in Captain America 4? Will he pop up there? New World Order? Will it be a Thunderbolts thing? Because I feel like because those movies are supposed to be kind of like very back, like just because they are back to back, it feels like, and because of all that, it seems like I talked about it. My thought was like, what happens in Captain America 4 is going to be a massive reason why the events of Thunderbolts happens, but who knows? Once again, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's going to be so interesting to see how the internet responds to this episode. Because I feel like, because of what I do know about She-Hulk from other people, this feels like the most She-Hulk thing you could do. But also with just like the sake of like what they were setting up, once again, it might not work for people. And I could kind of understand it not working. But dude, because it was such an out there left field ending, I was like, I'm sold. You got me. But I could definitely see this not working for people. So we shall see. Once again, fingers crossed, hoping for a second season. Because I once again, I'm selfish. I'm like, I don't care what some of the internet's saying about it. Whether it's the people, once again, let's not even include the people that the show's kind of making fun of them. Like we're not talking about those people. People who just in general didn't like the show. That's fine. They had their issues with it. That's fine. I really like the show, and that's all I care about. I want more of the show. I'd love to see what they do with the second season. Maybe it could also deal with a lot of the criticisms that people had. Once again, those criticisms being like maybe some of the writing, some of the story choices. Once again, obviously the biggest thing being the CG. But once again, not issues for me, but I recognize that those are big criticisms for a lot of other people. So I'd be maybe they could tweak things a little bit in a potential season 2. I just want more. I just want more Jen. I just want, spend a little more time with, like, obviously the other people in their, in her, workspace. Cause I know that was a issue for some people too, that like characters like Nikki, Pug, and like Mallory didn't get bigger roles or something like that. Yeah, they were fleshed out to some extent, but not to the extent people would want them to be. So, what other like weird D-list characters? I still stand by the fact is, I think this show has done a lot to expand the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like the way it just casually, episode after episode, is like dropping like D-list characters that people like, I have no idea who the hell that is. Who? Porky? Madball? What? Saracen? So it's that type of thing. So once again, fingers crossed, hoping for a season 2. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.